Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Engage Your class with compelling story maps. My name is Leah Martinez. I am the Teacher Preparation and Pathways Project Manager at Rio Hondo College. I also serve as the project lead for the Teach Los Angeles Regional Collaborative, which is hosting this workshop and all the other sessions that is part of the Teach for LA virtual workshop series event that is being held through November 20. So please use our hashtag Teach4LA when posting in social media. And we are really excited to have you here today. I am confident that you will find this workshop very engaging and informative. So without further ado, I will ask our presenters to introduce themselves and start the session. Warren and William, it's all yours.
Very good. Thanks. And thanks for inviting us.
You're welcome.
We love what we do. My name is Warren Roberts is my email. And I'm at Rio Hondo College. I am a background in landscape architecture, but I work with folks in all different areas. Will?
Hi, I'm Will Fesher. My background is primarily in technology, risk management, and I currently teach at Whittier Union School District at Santa Fe High School, and then also in the aeronautics department at Mount San Antonio College.
And we're going to go through this one-page agenda, and we'll share it with you at the end. And all of our links are in here, and you're welcome to contact us anytime. All right, I'll begin, Will. So I've been teaching GIS for 20 years, and I support folks at other schools too, even librarians, for folks in all different areas. Often it's been thought as being too technical, and you need a lot of skills. That's not the case anymore. And in fact, a lot of this can be done online through a browser, regardless of what platform. And what's even better yet is, well, industry is using this across all over the world. In fact, today is GIS Day, and the LA County is sharing how they're using GIS mapping, geographic information systems across the county. And I've never purchased anything software-wise because I don't need to. Everyone's using it. In fact, for you, is high school, middle school, kindergarten, K-12, you have access to all of the different online tools. The company is in Redlands. They are the world's biggest, most popular mapping GIS program office in the world. And they made it available to every single K-12 in the United States and across the planet. And what's also nice is that they will share with you lesson plans. You pick which grade level, what subject area, and then it'll give you the lesson data and the lesson plan and rubrics, everything. And you can find that there's a lot of research up online, presentations on how GIS is used across the curriculums and in STEM. If there's anything that should be in STEM, GIS should be in. Most of my students are in the industries already, and they're learning after the fact that they need this. And it's applied across the board. So you can look through, I put up a link here to a document you can view. What I think I'll do, I have some links here, so some videos. I'll show you one video. And then I'll point out there are some examples you can look through at your own time. These are story map galleries. You can actually look through this and find that there are it's another way of presenting. And you can, in fact, make story maps without even knowing how to open up any GIS. It's getting to be intuitive, like PowerPoint, Google Slides, but it's a lot more. And there's a lot of rich material in here you can view in different subject areas. So I'll first show a video here. So let me share this. I need to make sure I share the sound. And there it is. Okay, where was it? This one. Yeah, this will be fine. I got plenty of others to show you at some point. You can look through yourself.
We know we're interconnected. part of a broader, ever more complex whole. It can inspire. It can overwhelm. It depends on how you see it. In confusion, you find connections. In complexity, understanding. You spot the pattern. See the big picture. What you do keeps it working. Moving. On time. You make it faster, smarter, better. You can answer. Is it safe? Are we ready? How do we help? You find the cause. See the options. Decide the solutions. You help us all work together to take better care, be healthier, happier, and do the right thing. You make a difference because you can see differently. You have the power to see what others can't.
I have lots of other videos you can look through at some point in the future. I'm going to jump into what we've been doing, myself and Will, over the summer. We're working with middle school, and we got pretty excited, and I want to share with you what we've been doing. I'll go over some concepts later on with what is GIS. And first, I'll start off with this. If you're going to go into public health, there's no way around learning about this topic right here. Back in the 1800s, there were hundreds of people dying over a few days, and at that, this is actually what's called a story map. It's like PowerPoint, but you incorporate videos, sound, text, images, maps. And I try to use it now as my PowerPoint presentations. And you can start to do some of this yourself. In fact, when we're done today, you can contact us for information on how you can start incorporating this into your class, in your teaching, in your student, as a student in your work. But this is a very early example of geographic information systems, GIS. It's not what's in your car, that's a GPS. GIS is taking information. And in this case, they're trying to figure out why people were dying over just a matter of a few days. And in public health today, this is what we're using. In fact, at the very end of our session today, we put a map together for LA County, and it shows you where the COVID cases are at the actual addresses. I had to hide the location, so when you zoom in, it disappears. But in public health today, they're using this to do all the tracing. In this case, they couldn't figure out why people are dying. And they call it the miasma theory. They think it's under the hay, it's inside the windows, it's in the dust. They couldn't figure it out. Anyway, this gentleman named Dr. Snow, he said, you know what? People are dying from having vomiting and stomach cramps and diarrhea, something they were maybe ingesting. So when we worked with our students over the summer, we tried to share this with them without really telling them what the problem was. And we wanted them to try to think about why this is occurring, sort of as a detective themselves. So what this gentleman did, he took all of the locations where people are dying. Like I had shared with you, COVID cases, you can get down to the actual address, but they don't share this publicly. But imagine if you could do better tracing, which they were doing. And here he took the addresses and say, you know what, these are the deaths. I'm going to take these and then plot them out onto a map. You may have seen on the old TV shows when there's like a crime map. It's got maybe a real estate map on the wall with some pushpins. The same idea here. He took these addresses and then he drew a map of London, because back then there was no computers. And this actually is an interactive map. I can zoom in. You can see this is London today, and we just overlaid an old map. And you can do that pretty straightforward today too. So this shows you where the deaths, where he drew the death locations. In fact, I'll show them as points. So each one of those points is showing where there's a death. Now, imagine that this location here, this one is probably, I don't know what's going on there, but there's a lot of deaths. And shown as 1 point. What would be kind of nice would be to maybe intuitively people look at it at these points, they look at them the same. Well, how about if we just change the point size so it makes it easier to see where there's more? So here you can see there's a lot more dislocation. And then we can take those points and then we can look at it different ways. You've seen these before when you look at the weather maps where you see this concentration of yellow, it's like heavy rain. In this case, we can show this concentration is a lot of COVID cases, or in this case, a lot of deaths that were occurring in this area right there. And as I zoom in, it's all changes interactively. And so then he's thinking, why are they occurring? Why is it occurring in that location? Now, if I gave you the table of addresses of customers or patients or cholera cases in a table, it'd be kind of hard to see and correlate that to something else. Imagine where you live in your city. I said, here is a list of 20 toxic places in your city. Your first question will be, where are they? The same here. You want to know where these locations are. And then he got the idea that people were getting sick from congesting something. I mean, eating or drinking something. And back then, people didn't get water from the taps in the house. They got them from outside. So what he did then is he took those pumps and then laid them out above the incidents where people are dying. And immediately you can see there's a direct correlation, right? You can see that this water pump is directly right in the center of that location. So what did he do? He took the locations, he went to the pump, and then they removed the handle from the pump. And then immediately the deaths have gone down. So you can actually incorporate this into a class, and William is going to share with you some really cool things that he's doing in his classrooms. Right? In the olden days, GIS, Geographic Information Systems, wouldn't be introduced even today until third, fourth year, or even to the master's program. It needs to be brought down into the kindergarten, middle school, and high school. And when students are going through the schools, they're getting these skills and a lot more marketable because you are actually using GIS right now. You make an Amazon order, you get it the next day or the same day. They're using GIS to get that to you. So if I scroll through here, there's some videos you can look through later. You're welcome to use all of our material. We'd love to help you incorporate it. And you can share, like here's links showing where cholera occurs today, because of course the solution here was to simply take the handle off the pump or provide healthy drinking water. So again, I'm a landscape architect, but the tool is the same regardless of where you are, whether you're in public health, whether you're in surveying, whether you're in crime, maybe you're in fire. It doesn't matter what field you're in. This is applicable to everything. I know because I also work at the libraries where I provide services to faculty to incorporate GIS into the classroom. And I'm not telling them what to do differently. I'm helping them complement or supplement what they're already doing to just add that additional new tools to allow them to see things spatially, right? So once we go through, you can see that also here, there's an example. Loma Linda, my buddy over there, Seth Waif, he incorporates GIS into the public health. And you see a lot of maps up online right now with COVID, right? That's all GIS. So once we share this, and here's the links again that we provided, then we say, okay, students, we wouldn't tell them it's the pumps. I just shared that with you because of the slides here. But we'd say, okay, here's the data. Go explore this and 10 layers on and off, and you'll learn more about layers in a bit. And then come back to us and present. And I want Will in a moment to present to you what he's been doing. So this is what we normally give to them. Now you think, well, that's a lot of work to pull this together. Well, in fact, you know what? This data already exists up online. We can sit down during a commercial break of a show, and I can share with you how to make one of these, right? And then I can turn on these layers, and we have to go over what layers are. So there's the drinking source, there's the depths occurring, there's the cholera, and you can zoom in and you can zoom out. So what we're going to be doing here is that Will is going to share with you what he's been doing and how to incorporate into the schools, because I am just excited that finally we have people in our district, especially, that has started to incorporate this into the classroom. Will?
Thank you, Warren. So I do have to say that I don't know anybody that's more passionate about the subject than Warren. And I don't just mean GIS, but I mean getting it into the classroom and broadening the appeal of GIS so that it is something that is, as he said, being taught earlier and earlier. Maps are cool. I mean, but understanding what we're actually trying to accomplish here, I think you'll get a good sense for it here. So you absolutely can put questions in the chat, and we'll try and address those as we go. We have so much to share with you, though. Oh my gosh. So one thing I did want to start with, I wanted you to know that you can apply this to, I mean, in this case, public health, but you can apply GIS and in the classroom to social studies or history or math, or, I mean, there's just it's almost unlimited, certainly geography, but the idea of attacking different curricular areas and enriching it with GIS. That's really where I get excited. So for me, spatial reasoning, I'm a STEM teacher, spatial reasoning and critical analysis go hand in hand. So these are my curricular goals, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, just so you know, this is there underlying all the fun stuff that we're going to show you. Let's eat our vegetables first. So yes, we want students to draw inferences. We want them to identify outliers. And if you notice, Warren's using that vocabulary. So where are the outliers? Where are the correlations? We want them to certainly apply analytical skills and make assumptions about the correlations that they see. It's not just enough to say, hey, I think that this data is connected to that. I think the wells are connected to the depths. And better yet, I think it's that well. It's the poisoned one right there, the one in the middle of the heat map. We want them to make assumptions. Jump to the fact that there's something wrong with that well. So then do your own research, and then see if bring that research back into the map and see if it actually is supported by the data that's there. So inform your opinions, draw conclusions, and then locate additional data, which you think is going to support your claims. And it's so easy to add the data to these maps. Not something we're really talking about. Again, Warren and I can absolutely help you with that. But I just wanted you to see that I took this, Warren and I took it at the middle school level, but I took this at the high school level. It's the same spatial reasoning and critical analysis. So why is spatial reasoning important? And then we talk about the vocabulary, coordinate system, point vector line. And then as Warren showed you, the web map was the actual map he was using to manipulate. And the story map is the like the PowerPoint that he was saying, interactive PowerPoint. It's a way of presenting map data along with videos and all that. Those are the two vehicles we're going to cover today, the story map and the web map. Those are just vehicles for getting that awesome GIS stuff into the classroom that we use primarily. So we have these investigations, and I won't get too far into that because it's time to jump into the way that we kind of outlined the summer camp that we did. We got students interested in maps, and we wanted them to see some interesting maps, because maps aren't just about, when you say maps to students, they think, how do I get from here to there? Or show me a store near me. So in this case, you're looking at the states And like looking at an election map, very few, I think it was Wall Street Journal was the only election map that actually shows you the size of the state relative to how many delegates they had, right? So how many, the electoral map, and then you size the state. So in this case, you can see that Arkansas is much larger than California because you're representing the largest company by sales, by dollars. So different ways of thinking about spatial data. I'm going to breeze through this because there's so many of these. I could spend our whole time on this. Just having a student look at this and say, and then try and make correlations. Try and look for, the first thing we ask is, what are the outliers? What are the outliers? What smacks you in the face about this map? Well, how about the lack of big cats in Siberia or up there in Russia or Northern Africa? I thought Africa was covered in big cats. Or the fact that leopards are so dominant on the African continent. So there's so many outliers that smack you in the face, and that's what we teach our students, to look for the outliers and then look for the correlations. Correlations are a little harder, but you have to kind of look at the outliers first. So here, a number of Starbucks, it's not always a function of population, although certainly you can see that that's a factor here. Maybe this isn't the most interesting one. Here's where we get into more of our social questions. Here's a particular neighborhood in St. Louis, Missouri, where across that street, you've got folks that have 5% of them have a bachelor's degree. And across the street in the South, 67 of them have bachelor's degree. There's obviously quite a wide racial disparity there in racial makeup, and then income disparity. And so this is where we want to start asking why, and what data can I get that will start telling the story about why. So we turn our students into spatial detectives. It's their job to uncover what's going on, but also why, what's going on and why. And then can I get more data that will help me discover the why? And there's when we talked about this particular slide, there could be a correlation between potato production and vodka consumption. We don't have that second factor there, but that could be a factor here in the countries by potato production. So getting them to think differently about maps is a good first step. And I think that outliers, correlation, and inferences really, and getting them to think like that, it was definitely a key in that journey there of getting them to think differently about maps. Okay, so we have an investigation. Now you are taking the role of a spatial investigator. We want you to take on the dirty truth about San Francisco. And again, this is a San Francisco, the Paris by the sea, or lovely, lovely city. San Francisco's got some problems. So now we present to our students a story map. And again, these are really easy to create, but very, very powerful. Paris of the West. All right. It turns out that there's an investigative report in 2018 talking about the poop problem in San Francisco. And yes, we're talking about poop. And boy, let me tell you, that's an engaging topic. It's an engaging topic. It's very useful, but it's also a serious health issue and a societal issue, and it's complex. So tons of poop on the streets in San Francisco. San Francisco has an app where you can actually take a picture of it. It'll capture the GPS coordinates, and that is where this data comes from. The human feces incidents by year going up, and look at the jump there between 2017 and 2018. Now, it's important to note, these are reported incidents. This is not, there's no magic way of determining poop is on the street. These are people that have come across a pile of feces and take a picture of it and document it. And then we got access to that data. You have access to that data. It's public data. So it really does drive away business from San Francisco. And how is the city dealing with the poop problem? Well, they developed a poop patrol, folks that go out and actually do clean off the human waste. This is a needle reporting over the periods of fiscal year 2008, doubled from 2017. And the street cleaning budget keeps going up and up. So engaging them with all kinds, we haven't even gotten to a map yet, right? But you were setting up the story. San Francisco spent $250,000 per futuristic restroom. And those are public restrooms. They have beautiful portable restrooms, right? It turns out that in San Francisco, it costs $30 a flush to maintain these restrooms. So, and I asked the students to imagine if your family, if it was $30 a flush, you think your parents would be concerned about how many times you're flushing the toilet during the day? So that's really what it costs. And then there is some additional map that we pulled in. So the questions that we asked them, and this is the first half of the presentation, hey, what's the real problem here? What's happening? How would you recommend solving the problem? What would you do differently now that we're talking about what San Francisco has done to solve the problem? What would we do differently? And let's jump into the actual investigation. We are looking at a poop map. Yes, we are. And you can see that we've got graduated points. So points that are larger in size based on the amount of poop that we're dealing with in these various areas. And you can see that this interface, again, now we've gone from the story map to the web map. And you can see that we have a lot of options here. Obviously, where's the outlier? You can see the outlier. It's hitting you right in the face. There it is. And then I will zoom in and you can see that we get different data represented at different levels. So zoom is very important. When you need to zoom out and you need to zoom in. We can see that if we look at this level there's not as big of a problem over here as there is over here. There's definitely a problem over here. Okay, when we zoom in a little further, you can see that now we have access to those larger clustered points go away, and the individual spots where we have a feces report has come up. Okay, so now you can see that, and then we can actually look at the different data that we have access to. So these are the layers of data, and we have loaded up this map with all sorts of data. If you want to look at this from a heat map perspective, you can do that, but you have to be cognizant of whether or not that layer shows up when you scroll in or when you scroll out. Some of that data is not available. You also may not have that data show up if other layers are showing up. Okay, so you have to be aware of where you are in your zoom because not all data is available at all locations. I do see that we've got some outliers here. The heat map is showing up here, but oh my gosh, look at this. Look at this neighborhood. Even better than the clusters of poop that we indicated with our friendly poop emoji. This is definitely a place that has some issues there. Okay, so how do we perform our spatial investigation? We'll turn on some other layers. Okay, now that we've identified this area with the heat map, we can turn that off and we can start looking at, is there a correlation between education and poop? Possibly. Let's turn on the educational attainment. These are people that achieved a bachelor's degree. All right, and the darker, this is called what's called a raster layer, as opposed to the poop spots being the point layers. This represents over a period of square footage, square miles, how much poop was reported, and the darker the square, the more feces was reported. Oh, but we're looking at education, not poop here. So this is the more highly educated folks. And then you can see there's more highly educated folks here in general. We can zoom out. Oh, we can't zoom out too far. You have to maintain that zoom level. There we go. Now we have both the cluster poop and the education attainment layer. We can look at it by population density. And this is where we start turning on and turning off layers so that we can make correlations and discover, is there a reason why there is so much poop over here and not as much over there? And some of our students came up with some pretty interesting correlations that I necessarily wouldn't have thought of. And also, you get them to think about, how do we solve this as a society? This is definitely a problem that is not easily solved, or else we would have solved it. Homelessness is something, people experiencing homelessness, it's a serious issue in our society. So we have that one outlier location there. Let's zoom in a little bit. You can see that population density is definitely, there's some correlation between population density there and how much poop has been reported. And then we also, is there a correlation between Trader Joe's? I don't know. We've got a Trader Joe's layer. I love the Trader Joe's layer. More about that later. Pit stops are the locations where you can go to the bathroom. They're public restrooms. So the pit stop layer. And now we're looking at, look, we got 4 layers on all at once, right? And sometimes it can get a little confusing. So you can start to pull back a bit and say, okay, I'm going to pull off population density. Let's look at the amount of poop and the actual pit stop locations. And then let's maybe look at homelessness. Let's look at those encampment layers and let's look at that and let's see if there's a direct correlation between that population and the poop. And you could see that there appears to be a definite correlation there. So really having an opportunity to say what's going on here. Now Warren, he and I hid the homeless layer when they first did their first investigation, and we kind of pulled it out of the oven like the end of a cooking show because we didn't want them to have a stop there. Maybe there's other correlations or other data that they were thinking about. So we don't always show the homeless encampment layer, and there certainly are other factors here. And what are they? Look, we've got household income, we've got population density, we've got that educational attainment, and then the neighborhoods, we can turn on and off the neighborhood names. Okay, so going back to our spatial detectives question, now we can look at the second half of our presentation here, and I'll move on from our poop investigation onto a different one, but you can see now the power of driving the actual map on the story map and saying, look, I can select, the person doesn't have to be an expert in how to manipulate the map. I can kind of show them, oh, look. But it's so much more powerful when you can do it yourself, as you will find out, spatial detectives, when you do your investigation a little bit later. All right. So here's the poop density. You can see the homeless encampment, certainly. And this is after the fact, right? The hand washing stations, notice that they've tried to solve the problem there. I don't think that the hand washing stations are causing the problem. Is it causal? So then we move on to how much we've spent. And certainly it turns out that there was some corruption with the public works person that was indicted, Mr. Clean, as he was called, earlier this year for corruption in San Francisco. And certainly we could talk about that. There were federal charges brought in. It's a $72 million budget per year in 2019. So, and then we've got links in here as well. And you can certainly see how this might help you. Some questions here, right? And then there's a link to somebody saying these are things that can be done. So you can see how we kind of frame the investigation, frame the problem, rather. We'll set our spatial investigators off to do the investigation with the map. And then we ask them, now, how would you solve the problem? Or what data would you bring in to solve the problem? Warren, did you want to add anything to the San Francisco investigation segment before we move on?
One of the questions was about the level of drop in special events regarding the porta potties, maybe the usage. You can actually have the data in these maps live, and it's dynamic. So as with all these sensors now, you can determine if a parking stall is available or if it's not, or how many people are inside of a building or how many are not, or where are there certain cases of COVID, and it'll be dynamically changed. Because you could be pointing to their data, and all you're doing really, when we put these together, we're mashing up data from other people. Right? We can type in our own data, but that's student work or prison work. So I tell my students, it's a lot of work, and I can't type. I'm not very technical either. I just take what data exists elsewhere and I can bring it in.
So certainly. One thing that we can do is we can look at the exact numbers there as well and drill down there. But I'd like to, if we can, let's move on. But I did want to show one of the things that we did in our summer camp, we used Kahoot for quizzing the next day. And many of you are familiar with Kahoot. I don't need to do a commercial for Kahoot. But Padlet was another way of bringing in some other curricular tools. And so one of the things that I did here with my current class is this is Padlet, and they are doing current events with drones, and certainly bringing in a geospatial aspect of current events that are happening with drones, geospatial related events. So here I put this one in about a drone that inspected Chernobyl because I also teach drones as well. But Padlet was a great, and they have this template for geospatial. So just saying there's other tools that we use, and then we will definitely show you what the kids did with Flipgrid. Okay, so I did want to point out that we did, one of my students had a response to I asked them to do a Flipgrid. For those of you that aren't familiar with Flipgrid, it's like a little video, a selfie video. Well, you can also share your screen when you do that. And what we had these students do was share their thoughts on that investigation that Warren just showed you a few minutes ago. Let me see here. I do have this investigation. Okay, so in particular, my period 2 class are my advanced drone students, and I let them do a walkthrough of the particular investigation that they do. And Jesse, and I got permission from Jesse, but Jesse nailed it. Let's look
Hello, my name is Jesse Aguilar, and this is the poop investigation walkthrough. Now, the difference between a raster layer and a point layer is that a raster layer will show you information per square mile, and which is also pretty cool is that it will show you information by color. So the darker the color is, it's where the outlier will be located. For example, here, this is an outlier because it just smacks you in the face. Right? That's what a raster layer will also do. Now, point layer, it will show you exactly where something is. For example, here, you see this point? Yeah, that's one poop. That's a difference. A point layer will show you exactly where it's at. You see this? Yeah, that's a lot of poops. And yeah, now for some reason I can't rearrange my layers. I don't know why, but if you rearrange your layers, it will have a different effect on the map. And it will give you different information. It will show you something that you didn't know before. Now, the new layer that we have is homelessness encampments. Yes, this is a raster layer. This is the new layer that's been added. And a correlation I made is that the less pit stops there is, the more poops are going to be taken in the streets. So we need more restrooms. The less restrooms, the more poops. And also, another correlation is the more homeless people are in the street, the more poops are going to be taken. That's another correlation I made. The more homeless people are in the streets, the more poops are going to be taken. Yeah, my name is Jesse Aguilar, and thank you.
So I think we can all see that Jesse had real confidence there when he was talking about the map. He was able to talk about that data in a very confident way. And if you notice, he was using some of that vocabulary. He talked about the outliers, and Jesse's just an awesome person. But he was very excited about the fact that I was going to share his walkthrough with you. But I love to see him manipulating that interface. So awesome to see that. And then we did have another, I've got one more to show you a little bit later on, but we'll move on to the New York City investigation if we could. So our New York City investigation, New York City has a different problem, and they are trying to solve it in a similar way in the sense that, let me share my screen, so that they are addressing the rats taking over their city with a very similar fashion. They actually have the same app. It's called like 311. Person takes not a picture, but a sighting. They put a link on a map for the sighting, and then we actually had a few deaths in New York in 2017 related to rat urine. Okay, so it's rare but serious. We could show them a little pizza rat video. where the rat is carrying the pizza away. Pretty interesting there. The CDC has warned about rats during COVID-19 becoming more ravenous as the restaurants have shut down. And then some vocabulary in terms of teaching them about the burrows and distinguishing between burrows, rat burrows and burrows. But then giving them a role. You are working with the public health department. You have been requested by the mayor of New York to perform some detective work. Why is the rat population exploding in New York? And what can we do to resolve that problem? Okay, and giving them access to the map and setting them loose on the map. So I do like the fact that we're asking questions in the chat. Keep them coming. But you can see now that we've got, this is a little bit different interface, same layers there, or same interface for manipulation. You can see now that we're zoomed in a little bit over here on the lower east side, but I can absolutely zoom out and get a larger view. If we click on the points, when we have the point layer visible, we can actually get more information. So you can see now we're looking for those outliers, right? I can turn on other layers. We can certainly look at the density of the rats. And in order to view that, you should be a little further out in order to see that. And you'll be able to see the rat layer density. You can also turn off or turn on other layers with the litter baskets, food drop off, again, education, low income tracts, park layer, right? And then household income, right? So in this case, we are looking for the graduated rat sightings, and we can zoom in so we can see that. And here we go. We have some large areas, and we can use this to determine where the outliers are. And we can determine where we are on the map. Are we looking at Bay Ridge or the Flatlands? And some of this is going to be over here. We're in Brooklyn, right? Brooklyn's got a significant problem. Over here on this side in Flushing Meadows, not as pronounced of a problem, not as pronounced. And then when we head back over to Manhattan, you could see that it's pretty prevalent there over by Central Park in Manhattan. I'd like to point out another thing is, if you don't like this background, these are base maps, and the human geography base map is what we're looking at. You can certainly turn on actual imagery. Sometimes that doesn't help, right? We can go old timey here, right? If we want, and apply a different layer there, right? So you have an option of choosing, but honestly, if you're really trying to get to the data, that human geography layer is pretty cool. Jesse really likes the Nova map, but you can see sometimes the colors you've chosen, will conflict with that. Okay, so moving back to something a little more visible there. So that's the base map gallery. That's what it's called, the base map. What map do you want in the background? But digging into the data, I want to make sure that we dig into the individual layers and get into the actual, can't click on rat locations.
You need to zoom in closer.
Because we're not close enough.
Yeah.
Can't click on it. You can't click on it from here. You've got to get a little closer, but now you've used there's our density layer coming in. You can see the density, and we can actually hide the rat sightings to look at the hot spots. What's going on over here in Manhattan?
And zoom in closer again, and the points will appear.
What's going on?
Because those points, there's thousands and thousands of points that we have on there, and we just want to display them all when we zoom that far away.
So now we can choose an individual point, and you can see we've got data about that individual point.
And this data was entered by the person in the field with the mobile app on their phone.
So now we're looking for outliers, and we can look at, and then we can also, honestly, then we can look at correlations between the locations of the litter baskets. We can turn on the housing density, how dense. We can turn on the New York subway system and the stops to see there's the subway system that came up. So we can see, look at that. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, but what's going on over here? What's going on right here? One thing that Warren and I did is integrate a very well-known tool here to allow us to bring up a Google Street View. So I can actually go to that spot there, and now the student can continue the investigation. What's going on here? What's on this street? And, spoiler alert, multifamily apartments are a big factor in how many sightings are there. And you got to think also, there may be a lot of rats there, but maybe there's also a daycare center over here or a church. When people see rats and then they're outraged that when they're there, trying to worship, there's rats in the streets. Also, hey, there might be a direct correlation here, right? If you've got open trash cans, right? Open bags of trash. So integrating Street View into your maps can be very powerful. And that was something that's a trick that Warren showed me. And we integrated it into the map so that we can jump right in the Street View from almost all of these maps, and we can start looking at these outliers. Sometimes there's something on Street View that'll give you direct aha. Sometimes you have to look around a little bit. So some of the other things my students like to do, they like to look at the disposal vendors, right? Where are the trash collection areas, right? And that was something that they liked. Oops. One thing about my scroll wheel, it scrolls in too far. So I kind of have to use this up here. That's a occupational hazard. Here are the disposal vendors. And we can, when we zoom in, we can see if there's any correlation between the people who are collecting the trash areas, and the actual rat problem. So again, so many layers to play with. Sometimes you'll turn on one layer and it'll obfuscate the other one. So when I turn on the educational attainment layer, it absolutely wipes out the ability to look at the density. So you want to turn that on, turn that off, and you can kind of play this game where you're like, you know what, let me see if there's an educational correlation there, right? But it kind of hides it. And that's, you can also, one of the things you can do is mess with the opacity so that you can get that dual view of that heat map. And then if you can't see the raster layer, the education layer, you darken that a bit, and you can find some way of being able to see more than one or two layers at a time. Warren, did you want to make any additional comments about the New York City investigation?
My colleague, he works at Central Park. He's a landscape architect there too, and there definitely is a problem with the rat locations there. And again, they're just using an app that they use to report trash or maybe some type of sofa on the road, or if they see rats laying around or poop, whatever. And that data we just can pull down and then just mash it up into here. We did not need to enter any of this data because in the chat that I mentioned, I can't type. And I'm not very techy either.
So one thing is, if you're going to try and do the Street View, it's good to be on the street, because Google doesn't map in the middle of any other areas, and they don't map every street. So you kind of have to find an area on the street to look at. And again, there might be that correlation with the multifamily apartment buildings. It turns out there is a correlation there. Okay. Sometimes you can see trash containers on the street that have, they're missing lids, and we let our students really make those correlations. Look at that. Okay. So, this is one of the hot spots. That's why I chose this particular one. So it may not be a coincidence that we see a trash can without lids or improperly secured lids. It's a big city, a lot of trash. Okay. Warren, do you want to kick us off with our LA investigation?
Very good. So I need to go over the concept again of GIS. So I'll do that. And I have a lot of material, but I'm going to skip through a number of this, and you can come through it later and look at it yourself. Again, this is the story map. I just assembled some slides. And so essentially what GIS is, Geographic Information Systems. It's been around for 50 years and longer, and allows us to take data like this, which we've all seen data like this in tables. But we want to take that data and then display it so we can see patterns of where things are, right? Like here on the left, this shows you all of the cases of COVID in LA County in September. And I want to know where they are. The first thing I want to do is see where I live and relative to these locations, where these hotspots are. You can't see that inside our tables. In GIS, we could take these addresses and plop them in there. Plop is we use it called geocoding, which locate addresses, and really you just have to make sure the table is clean like in Excel. But you can look through this text later. But essentially, what I'm showing you here is that there's many ways where you can be applying GIS. Like, where would you locate a fire station in your town? If you had to argue to your city, well, I want to plot out where all of my stations are, existing ones. And then once I've done that, I want to see where all of the calls that are made for 911 that are outside the 5-minute drive time that we're supposed to respond to from the fire station. If you're beyond 5 minutes, then that gives me this gives me evidence maybe to that council member in that district to say, hey, you need a new fire station in this area because 50% of the calls that are beyond 5 minutes are in your district. Right? Or even, where would you locate this is easy. Where would you locate a wind farm? I always ask my students this. It may take them a couple of times to figure out the best place to put a wind farm, but you know the best place to put a wind farm, right, is, yes, where it's windy. In landscape architecture, that's what I was doing. We don't look at just aphids on roses. We look at where to site something, where to put a landfill, right? And so in GIS, it helps us be able to see patterns and try to also determine where to put something based on this information that we already know. Like, where's the windy locations? Where are the locations that are state properties? Where are the areas that are not visible to this historic site? Right? If you have those questions, we can find out where those locations are. Right? As soon as you start asking where, then we need to be using the mapping tools, GIS, to locate where these places are. You can read through this later on. I just want to give you a day in a life maybe of a project like this. Here I'm mapping a location that is 750 acres. And a small area that I was working with students last week, it cost the county of LA $54,000 in 7 days to map out by hand walking. We were able to capture the same area in 3 hours with a simple drone. Sure, there's some processing involved. Why am I talking about drones when this is about GIS? Well, GIS involves data from different sources, including images. And drones, you perhaps didn't know, give you more information than just images. We can generate topography, slopes, viewsheds, aspects, volumes. We can go to a large debris pile and we can say, hey, students, that group tried to determine how much volume that is. And then this group of students, then you do this by using the drone. And let's see, screen. So then once we've displayed this, we can ask a lot of questions. And so here, for example, this was flew with a drone, 100 acres in 30 minutes. And we can determine what percentage of the property is impervious or not pervious, and discuss that with the students, why that is important. Right? We cannot make our storm drains any bigger. If we put concrete down, it's going to have more runoff. We can't make these pipes any bigger. So we need to charge people more, which is what Measure K, what Measure W was a couple of years ago. And we can detect the plant health. This is an example of a drone. Drones are not simply little quadcopters. Here's a project I was with a colleague in ecology. He was down in this cave. It's actually a real cave. And at the bottom of that is 2 endemic species that exist nowhere else on the planet, except in that hole out by Baker. He's an ecologist. I work with him all the time. Ecology and biology and GIS and drones. Hashtag if I was students, this is what we need to be using in our courses. And they don't need to learn necessarily GIS in class. Ideally, they should be learning it before they take the class. We need more ecologists, more biologists, more public health, more educators with GIS so they can incorporate into their research, into their work. Here we're looking at thermal from caves. We're trying to detect the different temperatures at the top and at the bottom. And here, this is an example in GIS mapping. We want to look at topographies and slopes and viewsheds and detect watersheds. The data that we normally get on a web is pretty coarse. It's like taking an elevation every 30 meters, right? With a drone, it's every centimeter. This was collected with one drone flight. And you can look at the topographies and the slopes. Here, this is showing you locations of Joshua trees. I'm asking the students, count the Joshua trees. Sure, there's 1, 2, I think there's 2, 3, 4 Joshua trees. Okay, okay, fine. Here's 3 square miles, count them up now. You fly the area, you upload it to the cloud, on a cloud, meaning on a browser, and train a detector online, an artificial intelligence, to say this is a Joshua tree, count them all up. Once you have the counts, you can see how they're distributed. So here's an example of Joshua trees. We take some data, we can generate points, we can see, add some statistics in there if you wanted to. I can't even pronounce it. So what GIS allows us to do is take information and see patterns. If it's an image, we can extract things from there and look at patterns. And people normally think GIS, I have one in my car. No, that's a GPS. But GPS allows us to take information and map it out like the poop locations, right? Here's an example of a table that we normally look at. This is the same information displayed in a map. And so I know a number of you here from LA County. So what I'm going to just briefly go over before I give it back to Will is this is one type of data set. This is a census tract. We all need to know what census tracts are, especially now because every 10 years they count people, right? So these tracts identify in LA, how many people live within each tract. How many people are white, black, Asian, Hispanic, Taiwanese, Chinese, Japanese, British, Irish, Mexican, Guatemalan, Costa Rican. That data already exists up online. You can download that and look at it in this bloody table on the left here. But you know, as far as I'm concerned, the table is something that's very helpful to use, right? Here's your information. But with me, I have the actual geography and I can see them in the map. This is the same information. I mean, this is another dimension that we should be incorporating into our classes. Where is the information? Why is it in that area more? Where are these different equity issues? Why are some things in some areas, not others? So in the moment here, when Will explains us about LA, it may start to be familiar for you. So check this out. This next here is very cool. I shared this with my library. How well do you know Los Angeles? Okay, you think, well, I know LA very well. Let's see. I got 5 questions here, actually several. So what census group am I showing up on the screen? And you can actually put this into the chat. So it'll take a minute, I guess, to just display. My power's kicking on. So I want to show, is it Asian? Is it black? Is it white? Is it Hispanic or Japanese, Iranian? It's taking a minute to come up. So these are story maps. And, you know, a census tract has normally about 10,000 people, 5 to 10,000 people. And normally when there's more of something, like more people, more sales, more customers, it's a darker color, right? And let me bring this up on the different, oh, there it is. Okay, finally. Okay, what am I showing up on the screen? You can actually type it in. Am I showing Asian, black, white, Hispanic, Korean, Japanese, Iranian, or Armenian? What do you think? What am I showing up on the screen? I hit the legend. Very good. Black population. See, I added the community so you can tell. Now, how about for this one? What am I showing up on the screen? Asian, black, white. Well, we did black. It's Asian, right? There's there's a Diamond Bar. There's a San Gabriel area. On the screen here, this one, if it takes much longer, then I'll have you go through it yourself later. But this data came from the browser up online. And we'll share you a link in a moment for LA County, and you can explore it yourself. And you'll be able to identify it by pointing on a screen. In this case, just for this as an example, I told it not to pop up anything because I wouldn't want you to be able to get the answer pretty quickly. So this is taking too long, so I'll skip through this. All right. So I already went through this portion right here. I'm going to skip through it.
Warren, it is GIS day. I think maybe Esri and their servers are taking a a serious hit with everybody showing all the love for GIS. So happy
That's
GIS Day, everybody.
that's true, and it's GIS Day across the planet, by the way. Yeah. So let's see if this. I'm in incognito. Maybe that'll help, but it looks like it isn't. That's okay. So, oh, there it is. So, what is this one I'm showing on the screen? Asian, Black, White, Hispanic, Korean, Japanese, Iranian, or Romanian. I know most of you know LA, so that very good, Armenian. You do not even need to know Los Angeles to know what this one is. It's white population. And then how about this one? Any guess? You got to know what this one is. Right? Asian, Black, White, Hispanic, or Armenian. It's Hispanic population. It also lines up with the congressional districts, gerrymandering maybe. Election data, huge. It won't be long before you can look at some election data for the past election here. So this just gives you a few more examples of what we're doing, incorporating technology into the classroom. We incorporate the drone work into the classroom. Why? Because it's a lot of fun. Furthermore, it's used widely, and if our students are learning this earlier, they can then have that as a marketable piece. I checked yesterday the statistics. There's like 130,000 licensed users, because if you use a drone and you want to get paid, you need a license. Of the 130,000 licensed users, 7.7% are female, which is ridiculous. My daughter's right here helping me with a presentation to a drone seminar for women. And that shouldn't be 7.7%. In fact, in GIS on our campus, I'd say it's got the largest percentage of female versus male in the program. And here's just some examples where we can incorporate drones into looking at volumes, as I mentioned before. This is actually showing a place that was maybe 2 flights. And this is actually a real hill, which I can then look at. I could draw a line. This is from a drone flight, by the way, right? This is actually topography you can see, right? And I just drew a line across here. And can you imagine trying to draw the profile? There's the profile. As I move the mouse over, this is actually from the drone. How do you make this? Pretty easy. Fly the drone, take the card out, upload it to the cloud, and it'll give you an email back in 30 minutes, and you can see the results. And here is an example. Rihanna College campus. My students flew a couple of years ago. No place on this planet anywhere has more data than I have, a better imagery than I have here on the screen. There's no place better than this at all. This shows the location in LA by the LA River on the left here. This is the LA River. It's a new park called Taylor Park. We're doing some soil sampling, looking at where there's concentrations. Gaming in GIS. A lot of that data in gaming is actually from LiDAR, from data that they generate real cities in those games. If you want to look at any applications in using GIS, I put a link here for you. You can see how GIS is used in these different fields. And then lastly, if you want to know more information, just give me an email contact. And I think, Will, can I give it back to you for LA?
You bet, my friend. All
Okay.
right, well done on that. All right, so listen, folks. I've actually been a student in one of Warren's classes. Don't ask him how I did, please. But I know his teaching style and my teaching style are simpatico. We are project-based type people. We want to get your hands on this. So we are inviting you to get in the game, as I like to say to my students. Would you please jump into an LA investigation? I'm not even going to prep you. Get in there and try and learn. We are here to support you, but we definitely want you to get a chance to hop on one of these maps that should be open to the public. Here's the URL. It is in your chat. We have a whole story map for LA that we do, but this is about you discovering the outliers and discovering the correlations. I wanted to give you an opportunity to do that before we break for your questions. If you have questions, if you don't, we can dig in, but I want to know what you find when you think you found a correlation. Put it in the chat. Tell me what you think. Between 2 layers is what we ask for. So I will just briefly, now that I've given you that, I will show you some of the layers that you have available to you. And if you weren't prepared to be a spatial investigator, I'm challenging you. Try it now. All right. Be a spatial investigator. There's so much information here that we have provided for you, including the infamous Trader Joe's layer. But you can see that some layers will be enabled when you zoom in, some will not. Right now, we're just looking at the community layer, but I'll give you one correlation. One, you can't use this one. Guess what, folks? Well, hold on. Let's try a different one. We're looking at the educated folks shop at Trader Joe's. There it is. And there are other correlations with the Trader Joe's layer that, of course, you will uncover. Perhaps, my Trader Joe's layer is my favorite. I want to add it to everything. And again, that layer was available publicly. Research USA, Warren, was that the place that we got that?
Reference USA, the basic library. You don't need to check books out, right? Reference USA, you can download every bloody business in the United States, executive's name, gender, ethnicity, how many employees on site, the latitude, longitude, address, Twitter, everything. And then you can pull it down and add it to the map so you can see what those businesses are.
So we invite you, spatial investigators, start making correlations, look for outliers. If you were looking at education level in Trader Joe's, we took that one off the map, but as soon as you start to find some correlations that you want to share, go ahead and pop those into your chat, and we will give you enough time. If you have any questions about how to use the interface, I can give you a quick refresher here if you're paying attention. So on the layers level is here. That's how to turn on the layers so that you can turn them on and off. Some of these are raster layers. I got a tiny URL for that. So the raster layers you can change by changing the opacity. If you want to show and move that down, if you want to get some of the other layers in there. The tapestry layer is definitely special. I'm going to let Warren talk about the tapestry layer. I will turn it on, but you should talk about what the tapestry is because it is super special. There's the tapestry. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so tapestry. If you're going into business, marketing, there's no question. Either you're going to be doing GIS or you're going to be paying someone like me a lot to do the GIS for you. And ideally, if you're doing the analysis, you should be the one doing the GIS. But tracks are broken down to represent different populations. So we have what are called tapestries, and it's not only the folks here that make this tool. They provide the software and the data. Other tapestries exist too. This is the one that Esri has. So if you look at, this is like El Monte area. In these tracks right here, it looks like the population is like 28 years old on average, whereas some other areas are going to be like 50 years old on average. And you'll see the income differences. You'll see where they spend, how much education you have, if it's rented or if it's private, owner. What you can do, there are some online tools. We can have a student look at two different communities and do a comparison and have it automatically make infographics and make a presentation on that. Pretty amazing. All this data exists and you can access this too.
So the tapestry layer coordinated with Rancho Palos Verdes is the top tier. And did this pop up in the browser? You guys can see this one?
Yes.
Okay, so it gives you the size of the household, average size 2.8, median age, their median income, and then some traits about them socioeconomically, spending, and then certainly age by sex, and then look at their budget. They've got the outlier here for their spending is definitely in education, right? And then what do they do? What do they do for a living? They're managers typically. And then you can see that those management individuals make a good living, right? But this is the number of workers and this is the number of earnings. So you could say a lot of folks there in the management. net worth, median household income. So we can look at the disparity between that and the folks who are in Las Casas, right? And honestly, this is just data, and this can really drive some very interesting data-driven conversations where we talk about the traits of folks living in the different areas. Look at the distribution of the ages in this community versus that community. Occupation by earnings. The budget index on education is a very different number, right? So the tapestry can be your friend. It is very data heavy, but look at the beautiful job that the folks at Esri do in terms of making it accessible. So in order to access it on this map, you can click on any of the tracks, which are the little divisions there. And then right here will bring up the dominant tapestry segment for that tract. You don't even have to click on that. You can actually just kind of look at the data as it pops up here.
I'd like to show one more.
Go for it.
All right. So this is the same map, and I put the link in there for you. So this shows you, if I zoom in, you can see there's the census tracts, right? I can turn them on down here. This shows the dominant ethnicity, and each one of those shows where it's dominantly Asian, Black, White, Hispanic. You can see where people live close together. This actually is showing you the COVID cases as of for the September month, right? The actual locations, and the bigger points represent where there's a lot of cases in those locations. This shows you different pollutant data in by diesel. This shows you, let's say, here's a good one: kindergarten locations. Right, a few years ago, your students could not sit in the chair unless they did what? Any ideas? If you had kids going into class, before they could sit down in the chair, what was required of the kid? You're all in classrooms, so you should probably know, right? Immunizations were required. So back then, they could say, you know what, I don't want to immunize my kid. Well, then back then, you can ask for a waiver. Where in LA do you think there are going to be more people requesting waivers? Where about in LA County? That'll be interesting to know, because then you can focus more on where to put up the sign saying you really need to get your kids immunized. So these are kindergarten locations. They got this from the browser online, Office of Education. And then what I could do here is I could take these locations. I'm just changing the shapes of these, if I can. Maybe I can't do that right now. Okay. Well, I thought I could change this, but I'm not able to. All right. Well, what I wanted to show you, and I'm going to make it to be bigger. I just didn't make it available for you to do this, but I will change it. What happens will be, here's my color. It'll look like this. These areas here would be where there's more people requesting waivers. And over here, these would be a lot smaller in these areas. I'll make it to be a little bit different. So here, these schools would be really small. Not many people are requesting waivers. Whereas in these areas here, there are more people requesting waivers. And why is that? Well, I'm not quite sure why, because I don't have the hat on that says demographer or public health person. I don't have that ability.
Got some guesses in the chat.
All right.
Related to income.
Very cool. So that's the key here. GIS doesn't give you the answer. You have to put the hat on that says you're the public health person, you're the planner, whatever. You have to come up with your answer. That's what Will is pointing out when he's saying, giving the students the spatial detective hat to try to figure out what that is. Come back and tell us what you think it is. What also happens to be the case, by the way, if I clear this, it also happens to be these areas are where more people are requesting waivers in these areas, which just happens to be, by the way, the same locations where there are more bachelor degrees, and also where there are more Trader Joe's. It's in the same location. So there's some correlation there. You can visually see it, but you can also do, if you really wanted to, statistically. Like, you ever remember something about regression analysis? I'm not going to even go there. but you can do that from here because often people go into GIS, they enrich their data with some spatial information, then they take it into a different program to do whatever else they want to do with. All right, the last thing, I guess, I don't have, I guess, the ability to show you, but if I turned off this one and maybe turned on elementary school, I don't think it can change it too. No. Anyway, the elementary school is also has the option for you to see where there are schools with a big API score and areas where there's a less API score. And I can't show you that in here because I didn't add that option on there. Those are things that we need to fine tune. The last thing I guess I'll show you, we do have in here the Trump cast votes from 2016, right? The darker red means more Republican, blue means Democrat. Intuitively, right? We want to use those colors. If you want to confuse people, flip the colors. But in this case, we don't. So you can see, like in El Monte, this area has almost 100% Trump votes in these areas right there. Why is that the case? You can click on and investigate it yourself. All right.
I had one thing I wanted to show, Warren, if I could.
Yep.
And then if you do have questions, I'm hoping that you guys are digging deep, as I like to say, that you are digging deep. All I have on is the polluting industry layer here. And then one thing I wanted to point out is that's the layer, particularly chromium is the polluting industry. We can see the outlier here. Sometimes, and then we did turn on for this layer, the street view. So in this case, sometimes it is very easy to determine what's going on here. So what's going on here? I'm not sure. I mean, we can look around and what are we looking at here? Okay, not completely obvious. All right, but we can also say, let's zoom in a little further. Let's see if we see what's at this address. And you can do this too because you've got this layer right there. But sometimes it's really obvious. Oh, whoa, hey. Sometimes, you don't have to really dig too much, spatial investigators, right? Right at that address there, look at that. And then sometimes you do. Sometimes you do have to dig a little deeper to see what's going on. And the street view integration can be very, very exciting. So it's not immediately clear what's going on here. What is it about this particular address that is it the country cafe there down the street? No, probably not. But you can get an idea once we get to the break in the hedge, right? So let's see about this. So training your spatial investigators to do a good job here and be very methodical about looking for some of these things. What's going on? We've got some towers there in the background. What do you think's going on? So some interesting possibilities there. But can we get a better view? Yeah, we can get a better view. And the street view manipulation there. Okay. So you really can get with some digging down to why those outliers are the way they are. And I just wanted to point that out. Sometimes it's really obvious when you engage that street view, and sometimes it's not.
And while Will is showing that, I just did this where I can now go in here, and here are these are the locations where more people are requesting waivers, right, for the kids. You can see intuitively, bigger means more requests. And why is this the case? Again, I don't really know why that is. That would be a good paper research for some students or give to a class to figure out why is this the case. It's in the same location as the Trader Joe's. You turn on the education, you can see that that there's maybe relative to education. I don't know why. Maybe because in these areas they have, on the left here, maybe they have their own private insurance and they get the doctor to do it. Whereas in the central part of LA, they don't have that option. I don't know. And then here's one more. This one I just fixed too. This shows you the locations of the schools with API. So the bigger point indicates where the schools are performing with a higher API. Now you can see there's a pattern. And why is that the case? If I'm writing a grant and I'm in central part of LA right here, right? I would want to show this map to show that I need more funding for my program than these areas. And if I'm over in this area, I probably wouldn't want to show this map. Again, yep.
I do have one last thing I wanted to show, if I may, before we split. And I wanted to give us just a few minutes to ask questions, but I don't think you know anybody more excited about GIS than the two people you have captured here for today. So forgive us if we went over, if you didn't get your question in. But I have to show, this is a middle school student who took this summer school camp in GIS. And she produced a video about what she found with LA. Let's watch. Okay, so that is a middle school student that made all of those correlations and then brought her skill in video production and video editing into the summer camp classroom. Kind of blew us away, but you know, it unlocked her creativity in a different area. And this was, of course, Flipgrid that we used. And she shot that and put that up to Flipgrid. She produced that video inspired by her spatial investigations during the day. So super proud of that particular student, and that we were able to, in a small way, unlock that that particular creative drive for her to produce that video.
Without any help from her mom either.
Do we have any questions? Are you in there investigating?
I made some changes, so if you had refreshed it, you'll see the updates that I did. Because you're all looking at the same map that I have that I put up online. But if you have your own account, what you'd simply be able to do is save it as your own account, your own map, and then you can manipulate it yourself and add other data on top of that too. Fault lines, earthquake fault lines for LA City, LA County, it's already up online. You just need to add it.
Okay, we did have a survey that we wanted you to fill out, and we wanted to make sure we had the right.
I think Claudia has a question. Claudia, you have a question?
I do. Awesome presentation. Learned something new every single time I listened to it. I wanted to ask, the story maps, students are able to create their own story maps as part of their assignments in their classes. Have you guys, I don't know if Will, you've had your students do that already? I'm going to go ahead and implement it in my 2 classes that I'm teaching next semester. So I'd like to share if you can share a little bit of information of how that works. Yes. For the other teachers on the Zoom meeting.
So we promised that we would share the link to this agenda, and here it is. So let me put that in here. There's that. Nope, that was the wrong one. Hold on. Make sure I get this. Okay, that was the map link. This is the agenda link. So you just put that in and you'll get to our agenda here. It is open for you. And you can get access to all these links. But to share what you were asking about there, you really just need to head on over to this Esri mapping bundle is free. And this, setting up an account for your school, it'll kind of look you up and say, does your school already have a license? And you can request a free bundle for schools. There's my Cal State log in there, but you just fill in which school you're at, you send it off, and those fine folks at Esri will set you up with all sorts of tools. To create a story map is very, very easy, and it's all intuitive. And we can absolutely do further sessions on walking you through how to create a story map. We really wanted to introduce all the cool things that we're doing with it and give you the knowledge of what story maps were in this session, but we can absolutely offer additional sessions that dig down on creating story maps and creating these maps for your use in the classroom. Did I answer your question, Claudia? I'm hoping I did. And then back here, I see that we've got, look at that, Anonymous Frog and Panda, and they're all in there. So you have access to these links. And then the free lesson plans are there as well. So having the ability to teach with GIS, and you can do it on an individual level, like for your whole school. You could do it at a district level, or most of us are coming in it from a classroom level, but certainly the ability to correlate, with your, to collaborate with your peers. And you can certainly search for, here's a bunch of make a fire map, story maps for collaboration. There's so many resources here that we could do. And yes, I'm having my high school students create a story map as part of their end of this quarter assignment, and they're creating their own web map next quarter. Absolutely, Claudia.
Yeah, I had introduced the use of this with Will in the summer. And over the weekend, I did some cleanup and I deleted a lot of the things. And then I realized after the fact that Will is using it in his classrooms. So I had to fix them back up again. So even what we put up online and we're sharing with you right now, feel free to incorporate that into your classrooms. I won't do any cleanup, I promise.
Especially now, yeah, we've got folks that are hopefully going to use it. And please tell us. Our links are at the bottom. So please tell us what you're doing with them. Shoot it back to us and keep us posted. And we are happy to help you if we can. Link in with me. Look for Warren. He's a GIS teacher at LinkedIn. He doesn't have it here, but he'd prefer you go to his Rio Hondo page. So do that. Thank you so much for your time today.
And if you have if you're teaching a geology class, hey, do you have any map of LA County with geology and live earthquake reports? We can put something together for you, or I can have a student do it. So yeah, let us know.
And we did. Share this.
So I just want to thank everyone for coming today. Before everyone leaves, I just want to also invite all of you to our culminating event this Friday, which is November 20. It's the Networking and Transfer Fair. It will involve a student panel and a chance to also meet with and ask questions to some of our CSU and community college coordinators or teacher prep coordinators. So the session will also end with an opportunity drawing, which will give everyone a chance to win a prize as long as you are present and you reside in California. Also reminders, if you want a certificate, I added the link for the certificate request form. And also there is a survey as well, a link. I will send that to all of you later this afternoon. Thank you so much.